Well, I hope I'm not interrupting dinner. Was it good? Everybody enjoy themselves? How about a round of applause for Sodexo and their wonderful service here at CCU? I don't know, when I was a young whippersnapper for my undergraduate degree, I went to a different university. I won't name them, but the catering was not catering. We used to call it be very cautious, not catering. Totally different. Totally different here. So Sodexo they do a marvelous job. You know, I didn't introduce myself the first time through. I thought maybe being extroverted, I caught everybody coming in. So my name is Eric Hogue, and I serve as the Vice President for University Advancement here at CCU. If you have any questions after tonight's informal and informational dinner, I left a business card at your table, so feel free to take those home. And you can prank call me if you want to, or you can call and we can talk about Canton, Ohio all night, right? And your experiences there. Let me do this. On your table is a journal that looks like this. You grab those? I didn't put enough out there, but go ahead and grab one of those. And if the one that you grabbed has this inside, I have a door prize for you. So look for one of these and hold up our strategic priority objectives. Bush got one. Sir, right here. Is there one over here? There should be. Perfect. All right. Then I have a brand new, hot off the press Lee Strobel book autographed on the inside for you. So go ahead and take one. There you go. And here's one back here for you. Who was the winner over here? Was there one here? Was there a winner? Oh, that's right. I'm trying to give away your book. So you might have heard Lee Strobel has partnered with Dr. Sweeting and CCU, and we're underway in constructing the Lee Strobel Center, a center for evangelism and applied apologetics. And so this is his most recent book. I asked if he'd sign a few extras for us, and he gave a couple tonight, so that is courtesy of Lee Strobel, so enjoy. Let me encourage you that tonight is casual and informal, and if you want to take notes for the Q&A section at the end, you can do so. We're going to leave enough time that you can get all the questions you want at least answered tonight, or those that you need answered, we'll get back to you. If you have others who are interested in the tour and they are not here, there's two things we could do. There's a camera back here, and I think Walt has started that. We're going to live stream tonight and capture this, so later on we can email it to those who call the University Advancement Office. We'll email it out to them, and they can watch everything that happen here except enjoy the Sodexo food. They can have their own food on their couch watching it in front of their computer and gain all the details. If there's any other questions, feel free to call me in the office. We can answer those for you and make sure we get those answers back to you as soon as we can. With that being said, I think it's important for us to understand that trips like this are not done without much consideration and prayer. And I know from being here for about almost 2 years now, working alongside of the president, that this is a passion of his. Not only to enjoy the trip itself and to build relationships with you and your friends, but also to experience what Dr. Sweeting has experienced in numbers of trips to the Holy Land. And then to partake to you something that you can carry in your life, educationally, historically, biblically, and even personally from the trip. So what I ask is if the president would just greet us here at the top and give you from his heart the reason that he believes that this Israel trip in 2020 is vital for CCU and vital for a culture that we live here in America at this time and vital for you personally. So I want to give some time. Would you please welcome the president of CCU, Dr. Sweeting.
Thank you, Eric, and welcome, everybody. We're so glad you're here, and I'm just glad you're interested in this whole trip because it's a fantastic trip. A number of years ago, I lived in England, and when I was in England, I was a student over there, but I lived in the town of Oxford. And it was a real historical town, a lot older than the United States. And one of the fun things for me would be walking down the street and reading a plaque like John Wesley preached here, or George Whitefield preached here. There were two great evangelical preachers of the 18th century Wesley, the founder of Methodism. George Whitefield was used in the Great Awakening. And you go a little further and you see C.S. Lewis preached here and drank here, and and J.R.R. Tolkien was at college here. That was really cool. If you're a Lewis or Tolkien fan, to think it was right here. You know, this is where he sat in the chapel of his college. It just did something to your imagination. So that when you read a book about them, it just comes alive in a new way. Or even further back, there are signs saying Erasmus studied here back in the 1500s, or John Wycliffe studied here back in the 1400s, and back it goes. It's pretty, I mean, it's unlike America because it's old. It's really old. But then I went to Israel, and you catapult yourself back about 1,000, 2,000 years beyond that. And it's different because it's not just people from church history. It's Abraham came here. Gideon came here. David walked here. Jesus walked here. The early church met here, and it blows you away. Now, I'm a history nut. I love history, but I'm also a Bible guy. I love the Bible, and I've been studying it my whole life. But something happened when I went to Israel, and one of the guides on the trip I went, I think it was the tour organizer, because I taught on those trips. But they said, think of the land of Israel as like a fifth gospel. Not that the land is the gospel. I mean, we only have 4 gospels, and they're enough. But he said, the land of it, when you see the land, it throws the Gospels in the New Testament in relief. You ever see a relief map where, the mountains go up and it's a map, but there are bumps for the mountains and valleys. You see the New Testament in relief. You can never look your Bible the same way again. And I have to say that was so true. That was part of the joy of being in Israel. There's no place like Israel in the world. It's got a unique, one-of-a-kind past. I mean, if you care about the Scriptures in any way, shape, or form, you just can't get around that. It's a place where God made a covenant with his people, where God chose to make his presence local in the temple, where God touched the ground, so to speak, in Bethlehem. I mean, it's one of a kind. It has a one-of-a-kind present, because Israel today is a miracle land in that it came back from non-existence, and after countless attempts to wipe out the Jews, and it's the most fought over real estate in the world, right? You have Judaism, Christianity, Islam contending for the same space. It's unique. It's one of a kind. And if you take Bible prophecy seriously, I believe it's got a unique future to it, that God is not done with the Jews, and that Christ will return, and so it's just a unique place. It's different. I love America, but it's different from the United States of America. You get a different vibe, a different feeling. Israel has been the crossroad of the empires, so it's like an 18-layer cake where there are all these. Have you ever had a 7-layer cake? They're pretty good, decadent, but good. But archaeologically, it's like a 18-layer cake. This civilization, that civilization, this civilization. So it's absolutely fascinating. There is a presence in Israel. I can't describe it. I can't put it into words, but you just feel like it's different. It is Bible country. It's got stories all over it. Just the fact that Jerusalem was destroyed in 70 A.D. by the Romans, and they thought they were done with it, and that they came back in the 1940s, and the Jews gathered from around the world back to Israel. It's just, even to secular historians, they scratch their head and they say, this is unique. What's going on? So after I went, I just couldn't read my Bible the same way, and it helped me in a way that I love Bible study tools, but it just added something to my understanding of the Scripture, and I'm very, very grateful. When you go to Israel, you experience the place. There's something about being there. Now, I'm not the first one to say this. One of the early church fathers, a man named Saint Jerome, who was one of the earliest Bible translators, he took the Greek and translated into Latin. And anybody have a Catholic background? Nobody. Well, interesting. Anybody have a Protestant background? Okay, your Protestant Bible, early on, there was a Latin Bible. And then people started translating the Latin into English. Wycliffe did that. And then eventually they went back to the Greek and translated it into English. But so when the gospel needed to go to Southern Europe, they translated it into that people group, and it was Latin. And Jerome was the guy who did that. But here's Jerome in the early 300s, and this is what he says about walking what he calls the paths of faith. He says, just as Greek history becomes more intelligible to those who have seen Athens, and the third book of Virgil to those who have sailed to Sicily, and so to the mouth of the Tiber, so the man will get a clear grasp of Holy Scripture who has gazed at Judea with his own eyes. And this is in the 300s, he's writing this. And then he wrote that such travel was not just to get knowledge, but to worship on the spot where the feet of the Lord once stood. He said, it's just amazing. He said, each time he visits Jesus' tomb, quote, we see the Savior in his grave clothes, and if we linger, we see again the angel sitting at his feet and the napkin folded at his head. Well, it's dramatic words, but from long ago, but many people that's why people go there and have gone back again and again. You sort of become a Christian pilgrim. People did pilgrimages to go so that they could be close to where it happened and get the spiritual benefits of doing that. And when you can do that with other people, it's wonderful. So on our 11-day tour, we will be visiting all kinds of places, but I wanted to just mention a few of the places that meant a lot to me when I was there. So I remember going to Caesarea by the Sea. It's where Paul was in prison before, and he spoke before Felix. And you can go to the little Colosseum where he made his defense before Felix and Festus. It's pretty cool. I remember going to Nazareth, and in Nazareth there's an old ancient synagogue that's sort of under the city, and the best guess by Bible scholars is that's where the synagogue was in Jesus' day, which means Jesus as a little child would have probably gone there with Mary and Joseph. And to be able to open the Bible and read about Jesus and his youth growing in wisdom and stature, I mean, it just sends shivers up and down your spine. Well, I remember being on Mount Carmel and thinking of the story of the prophets of Baal, or being at Capernaum and seeing Peter's house, what they believe was Peter's house, or Bet Shan, this city that was uncovered. So I did 4 tours to Israel. I co-led them when my dad was president of Moody Bible Institute. And he said, Don, I can't do all this myself. Would you come and help me? And I had done a lot of church history. I was working on my PhD at Trinity. And so I thought, well, I'd love to. I don't have to do all the work. I can do half the work. And so we brought 50 to 100 people 4 times. And I had the privilege of teaching at all these sites. And it was the privilege of a lifetime. So those are some of the places, the Jericho Road, Temple Mount, the fortress inside Jerusalem where Jesus would have been whipped, Masada, Qumran, the Garden Tomb. Just unbelievable. So it was a privilege for me to do that, to go to those places. And the benefit I feel with Israel, anyway, is having been there 4 times and taught there 4 times, I feel like I know a little bit about it. But I got to tell you this. it changes a lot from even year to year. So one year we went to Bet Shan, this city. It's between Galilee and Jerusalem on your way down to Jericho. And they had just uncovered this Roman theater. And that was all you could see. I mean, beautiful theater that was uncovered. And you could see the old city hill where they nailed Saul and Jonathan's head to the door after Saul and Jonathan were killed. But then the next trip, the year later, the archaeologists were working on it so much, they uncovered a whole city around the theater. And now the ruins of Bet Shan are absolutely incredible. So a lot can change just from one year to the next, which makes it very interesting. So I can't wait to go back to see what I've never seen before. Christina and I would love to have you come with us. This is it's more than a tourist trip. It's a walking the paths of faith with others. For spiritual reasons, it'll be unforgettable. For fellowship reasons, it'll be wonderful to understand even the Middle East today and just the dynamics of this small little country. It'll help you with that as well. So we think it's a great opportunity, and we thought we'd open it to friends at CCU. Now I want to close before I give it back to Eric and just take you to one psalm, and the psalm is Psalm 122, and I'll just read the first 5 verses. And it's one of the Psalms of Ascent. You know what the Psalms of Ascent are? They were the Psalms that pilgrims to Jerusalem would sing when they were going up to Jerusalem, because you always go up. Jerusalem is up. And they would sing these. So the Psalms of Ascent are pilgrim psalms. And Psalm 122 begins this way. I rejoice with those who said to me, "Let us go to the house of the Lord. Our feet are standing in your gates, O Jerusalem. Jerusalem is built like a city that is closely compacted together. That is where the tribes go up, the tribes of the Lord, to praise the name of the Lord, according to the statute given to Israel. There the thrones for judgment stand, the thrones of the house of David. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem." Well, some of us, we can't wait to have our feet standing in the gates of Jerusalem and to sort of walk that pilgrim path with many others who have gone up to Jerusalem. And pray about it. If the Lord's in it, maybe you'll be there too. So, Eric, I'll pass it on to you, but I can take questions later. Maybe if you open it up for questions. Yeah.
We can do that. Dr. Sweeting, thank you. I know that you're probably sitting there in your seat thinking, wow, a president of a leading university with a PhD in church history, if I go on this tour, can I get a master's degree? That is not true. That is not true, although you may have the equivalent thereof of a master's degree. Christina's laughing. I didn't say Greek scholar, though, right? I didn't say that. So I hope that when you consider the opportunity, and again, I want to reiterate this, there's a lot of thought and a lot of prayer and a lot of intention from Dr. Sweeting and Christina that this trip would be more than just a trip, that your investment would be more than just a vacation, that your time with Dr. Sweeting and with your brothers and sisters in the Holy Land would be more than just 9 days or 11 days, and we'll have Dan address that in a moment, that it would be life-changing. And God's Word and the gospel of Jesus Christ would open your heart and your eyes, even in a fresh way, right? So that's the intent of today. There are logistics, I get that. There's, what about the trip? What do I wear? How excruciating will the walks be? When can we eat? Is there free time? Can I be a tourist a little bit? And all of those are best answered by Dan. Dan, come on up. He has been kind enough to represent the tour company. And Dan Hauser is a great friend. He knows more than I can even begin to offer you, and I want to give him a chance to get up here. Dan, if you could just describe In Country in Israel, then the add-on in Germany at the end. If you could decipher the stock market, just greet the folks, tell them what you want to tell them, and at the end we'll do some Q&A for those viewing online. Dan, let's welcome Dan.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate the chance to be here tonight, and I want to get just a quick show of hands so I have a little pulse on who I'm talking to tonight. How many of you have traveled outside of the U.S., so you've already used a passport at least once in your life? Great. All right, so that isn't going to scare you. Have any of you traveled to Israel before? 2, 3, okay. Has anyone ever traveled to the Passion Play before? None. Okay, now I know where I'm coming from. Some quick background before we get into some of the details. What I'm going to try and do is, best I can, is answer the most common questions we get like this, and then we're going to open it up in case we miss something so that you can throw questions back at me. You've heard the expression that it's a small world, and particularly in Christian circles, it's a small world, but I have to say this about my rediscovery of that again tonight. I grew up attending a church in Boulder, and anytime our pastor was out of town, the first person that they would ask to come and preach was a guy named Dr. Beckman, who probably dates myself a little bit, but he's on the wall here somewhere because he was one of the early presidents of this school when it was not called CCU. All right? So we had a connection with the school going way, way back then. Then, after I graduated from a college in suburban Chicago, my college roommate and I chose to start a church. We were sitting in our living room one night with our wives, and we said, you know what? This could be really an interesting idea. And the two of us, then we got 2 more couples. We started a church that has flourished. And a few years later, Dr. Sweeting was ordained in that church. It's called Christ Church of Lake Forest. And so we were just finding that out tonight, that we have that connection going back to suburban Chicago. I used to hear his dad preach many times when I was in college. So some connections there. I wish I was going along, but I'm not. Let me tell you why I'm here, and then I want to tell you a little bit about the tour company itself, just to give you a little comfort level for that, and then we're going to talk about this specific trip. I've been on the pastoral staff of a church up in Boulder called Calvary Bible Church for 15 years now, not as a senior pastor, but my role is to be responsible for all of our adult ministries. So life groups, Bible studies, classes, things that we're doing for young married couples, retirees. I get to wear a lot of hats in that regard. And one of the things that I felt would be worthwhile to do for our church would be to create some trips that people could go on together, just to create that fellowship and community that Dr. Sweeting was talking about. And so we've done many trips like that in the past because my wife was a flight attendant for many years. We owned a travel agency for many years. So we were very experienced in travel ourselves. So we took a group, for example, to the Panama Canal, or we took a trip to, we did a couple of tours of Germany, looking at the Reformation, the history of Martin Luther, and how that connects to church history, and so on. But many people were asking that we do a trip to Israel. Well, that's not the kind of trip that I'm qualified, for example, to do on my own. So I said, we need a tour company that really knows what they're doing. So I'm very familiar with the travel side of it, but we researched many different tour companies that exist out there, because there are quite a number. And we chose this company called Imagine Tours, which if you have a brochure, you'll see it on the corner there. They are a company that has been in business about 35 years. They do over 200 such groups every year. So they have an enormous, negotiating power with the airlines. There are no travel agencies that can negotiate your airfare if you're going to fly to Europe. Imagine Tours can. They're able to get blocks of seats because they're doing so many groups. It's very helpful because the price for what you're getting here is probably 60 to 65% of what your price would be if you just said, I'm going to go do this on my own. They have such experience in terms of what hotels they have their groups stay at, what guides they use, and so it's become just this turnkey process. So what I'm excited to say is for Dr. Sweeting, he doesn't have to worry about making those kind of arrangements. He will be your host, which is a wonderful opportunity. But from the minute you get off the plane till the minute it's time to get back on the plane, you will have a local guide with you that knows anything and everything you need to know about the area. And so it just makes it such an easy thing. So we, with our church in Boulder, we have done 3 such tours of Israel. I've now been helping Imagine Tours anywhere in the western states to work with other churches or parachurch ministries to do their own group. And because of some relationships that I have here with some of the other staff, they introduced me to Dr. Sweeting as we just were having this conversation, because next year is a very, very special opportunity with this Passion Play. If you know anything about it, it's only done every 10 years. It has a phenomenal history, goes back some 500 years, and that in and of itself is a special story. And I hope anyone that goes on this trip is planning on making that stop. It's 2 more days, to extend the trip, to stop and see the Passion Play on your way home. Anyway, Imagine Tours has 59 groups touring different places that are ending up at the Passion Play. And this will be one of them. I happen to be hosting another group with our church in Boulder. We're going some different stops, but we're ending up at the Passion Play in June. But this is the one, as you know, that is in September, 9 days in Israel, and then the day of travel to Munich, a day at the Passion Play, and then coming home. So now, that's the background for myself and for Imagine Tours, why we chose them and why we've been so pleased with them, with the many, many groups that we've helped to arrange. So I'll refer now to a few things on the brochure. First of all, most of what you need is on the front page. All the fine print is on the back page. That's kind of how those work, right? But you can see the dates and the price on the front page. And I want to stress something about the price, because some people are skeptical, saying, well, what are the hidden surprises that come with that? All right, first of all, there are no surprises. That price includes everything except lunch. All right, so what does that mean? Your airfare, including all the taxes that go with that, hotels, wherever you're going to be staying, your bus and bus driver, your guide, any admission fees to any of the places that you're going, huge breakfast and dinner buffets every day, phenomenal food that you get to experience on this. Even the gratuities, everything is included in that price. So your only out-of-pocket cost is what you want to eat for lunch. And a lot of people, my wife is an example, she goes through the breakfast buffet and she'll take a muffin and a couple pieces of fruit, stick that in her little fanny pack or pouch, and she's got lunch, and that's fine. I'm just saying that it's easy. And the reason you can't include lunch in this is because you never know for sure where you're going to be in that moment when it's time to take a break for lunch. But there are no surprises, okay? Everything else is included in that price. Now, you also heard Dr. Sweeting say there's a 9-day tour focusing on Israel, and then it's the Passion Play that's an optional add-on. So you can break that off if you just say, I've only got 9 days of vacation, can't do the other 2. That's okay, you can do that. I personally would encourage you, if it's at all possible, to include that Passion Play as part of it. It's too unique, too special. That's why, like I say, we are hosting a group from our church to do that as well next year. Security is a huge question that people ask about. And I can only tell you this, there is no country in the world that has a system of security that can match Israel. Guaranteed. Now, are they going to take you places that are unsafe? No. I could take you to Chicago to places that would be unsafe. And I'm from that city. Dr. Sweeting lived there for years. You learn there's places in Chicago that it's just not smart to go to. Well, frankly, the same is true. Look at the news today. On the southern border, the Gaza Strip, there's noise happening there again. That's not close to Jerusalem. That's not close to all the places that you would be going. I will tell you this. One of the reasons that it's not good to procrastinate on registering for this trip, if you're interested, is because anyone who's going to go to Israel the government of Israel requires that they get a copy of your passport well ahead of time. They want to know every person that's planning to come into their country. And believe me, they will screen you and your background to determine if you're welcome to land in their airport or not. You know, I'm glad to know that, frankly. But you don't worry about security. They think through everything wherever you're going. For example, there's one place that your bus will not go, and that's Antioch. You'll drive by it, you can see this old city, you're not going to go in there because that's just part of the agreement that they have. The residents there are Arabs, and they just said it's just smarter if we don't mess with tour buses coming and going. That's one example. Another example, when you change hotels, when you're taking your luggage to your bus, and you do change hotels 3 times while you're in Israel, and then another one in Germany, your luggage is sitting in it's taken from your hotel room down to the lobby area, but you have to stand there and say, this is my suitcase before it's put on the bus. They're not going to put anybody's suitcase on the bus that isn't standing there and saying, that's my suitcase, that belongs on the bus, so that no packages get on the bus that are not supposed to be there. It's a little example of the security that they're doing. So I address that because it's extremely important, and they treat it unlike any other country you'll ever visit. I mentioned passports. Israel wants to make sure that your passport is not only current, which that's up to you to check on that. You know, usually you get a passport and it's good for 10 years. But if it's within 6 months of expiring, they will ask you to get that renewed before you leave here. Okay? Even though you might have 6 months left and you think, I'm only going for 2 weeks, right? They don't want to cut it that close. So look at your passport well ahead of time to know what is the expiration date. If it's within that 6-month window, you'll need to get it renewed before you leave on the trip. Technology being what it is, everybody's got smartphones and iPads and all kinds of stuff they want to bring. But if at all possible, do not bring laptop computers. There's so much misuse that can be taken with a computer. The chances are you'll delay the group when you land going through security, and when you leave, they may send the computer home on a different plane. I've seen that happen. Now, some people, they have to have their computer along because they're doing work. In this day and age, they can work from a virtual office. Okay, just know that there may be some delays with that. But if at all possible, leave the computers at home. Another simple thing that's just practical on a trip like this, it's better, if a couple is going, it's better for each of them to take their own suitcase rather than taking one bigger suitcase. Now, everybody gets a free suitcase on an international trip. You get one. And that's up to 50 pounds. But the fact that you're having to move several times, we're changing hotels today kind of thing. If you have one big suitcase for you as a couple that weighs 50 pounds, that's a hassle. Whereas if you can take 2 suitcases that are 30 or 40 pounds each, it's a big difference. And that's just a simple practical tip. So everybody plan on taking your own suitcase. Now, here's some more practical things that always come up in the way of questions. Single persons coming along on this trip, absolutely welcome, but please know that the hotel pricing is based on double occupancy. You often hear that, and it's true here. So if a single person is booked on this trip, they will have to pay an upcharge, the equivalent of 2 people being in the hotel room, and you see it on the back in the fine print, but it's an upcharge of, I think, $795 for the Israel portion, or another $300 for the Germany portion. That's $1,000. So if you're a single person interested in going, talk to someone else at your church, another single person that might want to go with you. Unless, $1,000 is something that you can easily dispense with, and you have that choice. But just an FYI, single persons do have an upcharge when it comes to the pricing because of the double occupancy expectation. Other people ask if they can do their own airfare. There's a lot of people nowadays that travel extensively with business, and they accrue all these miles, that they want to use for their own free airline ticket. The answer is yes, you can do that. And you'll see in the fine print on the back page, it says the land-only portion, which gives you a $600 credit, meaning whatever that price is, if you look at the Israel-only price or the Passion Play price, just subtract $600 from that, and that would be your cost for the trip, and then you arrange your own airfare. And what you could do, let's say give or take 4 to 6 months before departure, so sometime next spring, you could talk to Imagine Tours, because by then they will know what flight schedule they're using for this trip. They negotiate with numerous airlines, so it's not like they're locked into any one, because they're always shopping to make sure they get the best pricing. But they will know the schedule so that you can kind of coordinate with that, and that way you're arriving roughly the same time, able to leave at the same time and so on. We just took a group this May to Israel, and we had 3 couples that were from out of state. And Imagine Tours, because they're working with so many airlines and whatnot, they made everyone arrive in Tel Aviv within 30 minutes of each other. It was a piece of cake. And if you're on a different airline, don't sweat that. They will recommend, saying based on these flights, if your mileage is, let's say, with United, just picking one at random, and United Partners, they can help you find which flights would make sense to get there, okay? That's if you want to use your own flight travel arrangements in that regard. Someone will ask about diet limitations. My wife now, it's very difficult for her to go to a restaurant to eat because she is gluten-free, dairy-free, and I'm going to say about 3 other things, random things that she just can't eat. As long as the tour company knows ahead of time what your diet requirements are, no problem. Even on the airline. Nowadays, there are so many people with picky little things like that. They will have a separate meal for you if they know ahead of time. Okay? So if that's a concern of yours, just let Imagine Tours know when you register, and it's no problem. I mean, at these hotels, you have these huge buffets for breakfast and dinner, and my wife was just astounded at the extra plates that they were making for her and one other lady in our group that had diet concerns. So, again, should not be a problem as long as you let someone know ahead of time. Registration itself is very simple. You can do it online. I'm still old school. I want to talk to someone with a live voice and know that I'm getting the details that I want, particularly with diet concerns. You're not going to get that taken care of online. You're going to need to call someone at Imagine Tours, and that information is on the brochure. Just call during regular business hours, and they will be glad to help you. When you talk to them, you need to have the tour code so that you're, as Eric was saying a few minutes ago, you don't get on the wrong flight to the wrong destination. The tour code is Sweeting 20. It's very simple. It means who's the host and what year are you going. It's a very simple code. But if you say I'm part of the group for Sweeting 20, then they got it, all right? And if you want to tell them about your diet concerns or anything else, that's fine. But the registration is a little more complicated with this kind of a trip because of the Passion Play component. Those are expensive tickets. Imagine Tours has gotten, as I say, blocks of tickets for 59 groups, so they've really planned. I mean, they started this 3 years ago, making these arrangements. But because many things you can just hold a reservation with Passion Play tickets, they have to be paying for those in advance. So here's the way this deposit works. The moment of registration, you need to pay $500 a person. That guarantees your reservation. But within 2 weeks, you get an invoice for $500 more. So if it were me, when I call to register, I would rather just say, here, take $1,000, and then I got that one done. But that's your choice. Then, about 6 months from now, anyone who's registered would get an invoice for another $500. It's just kind of an incremental deal. And then the full balance is not due for the trip until about 4 months before you leave. So May, something like that, of next year. Okay? So it's not like you have to have $5,000 to slap down on the table tomorrow. No. There's several increments of these $500 at a time. But that first $500, that guarantees your reservation so that you're in. Now, the deadline would not be until probably 60 days, maybe let's say 75 days actually, before departure as the absolute deadline to register. I just have to say, don't push your luck on that, because this is a very finite number of tickets to the Passion Play. You know, if it was just the Israel trip and more people wanted to come, they just add another bus and add more people. When we were in Israel this May, do you know the name Greg Lowry? He's a big-time evangelist out of Los Angeles. Anyway, he had a group of 500 people. Now, the logistics for that were absolutely a nightmare. But I'm just saying, you just add another bus and you just add more people. They could do that. With the Passion Play, that's not an option. In fact, we're limited. Thankfully, they just upped the number, but we were told it's up to 40 tickets. So just don't procrastinate. If that's something you know you want to do, I would say get your $500 and get on the list, because it's first come, first serve on that. A very important piece for you to consider would be travel insurance or cancellation insurance. Now, there's one company that is frequently used, and they're called Travel Guard. But this is at your discretion. This is not included in the pricing that you see. It's your option. But I always stress that we recommend it, because life happens. You might think you're in great health today, but let's face it, you and I know of people who suddenly something happens to their health, or they have an aging parent, or someone else in their family. Something happens. Life happens. And your plans have to change. Even if you have paid the entire, $5,500 for the trip, and a week before you're ready to go, your health crashes, or some circumstance that you say, I have to cancel the trip. That's the urgency of having that cancellation insurance. You'll get an entire refund. So we really urge people to use, call it cancellation insurance or travel insurance. Now, we are going to wait until later for any particular tips on what to pack or what to read in advance based on those who are actually registered and going. A contact person will be communicating by email from time to time and say, in September, you want to make sure you have a windbreaker and at least one sweater, because it can be cool at night, a couple places. It's still going to be very hot during the day when you get out to Masada, the Jordan River, and so on. But those kind of logistics, we're going to wait till we actually see who's registered, and we'll give you little tips about packing and stuff. You don't need to bring formal wear like you're going on a cruise. It's a very casual trip, to be comfortable. I would stress to make sure you just have excellent, comfortable walking shoes. Most days, you're only going to walk a half a mile to a mile total in the day. A couple days when you are in the old city of Jerusalem, it's a lot of walking. And you'll be very glad that you maybe we're walking a little bit between now and then to be in shape, to be toned up. It's not hiking, climbing. I mean, there's some of that you can do if you want, but it's not that. It's just that there's some extensive walking for a couple days when you get to the city of Jerusalem. Okay, let's take a break there and just see, what have I not touched on where you got some questions? Anybody? Okay, over here. Can you speak up, or do you want a mic? Oh, let's use a mic since this is on the camera. Give us a second.
There you go.
Are Americans required visas?
Okay, no visas required. Good question. Just a passport is what you need. No, and no shots of any particular kind that you're needing. It's very clean, very healthy. Other questions? Yes.
I'll come to you. It's my exercise tonight. It's my cardio.
So you mentioned that if we wanted to take a different flight, that was an option. What if you wanted to only do one of those flights differently? So like the back end or the front end, if you took a different flight going in to get there earlier or took a different flight out to stay later, what are the options with that?
Okay. I would ask that you talk to Imagine Tours. They might be able to include you on the group flights for one half, and then the air credit would be some portion of that. Just work that out with them, all right? They're very flexible on that. Yes, sir.
Do you know if there are any travel restrictions within the region? If you have an Israel stamp in your passport, does it limit your options in, say, going to?
Great question. If we were going other places, in this case, no. You know, if you were going into Jordan or Egypt, sometimes there has been. Not with this trip. No concern at all. Dan.
How much free time, or what kind of free time would be available to explore?
How much free time? Not a whole lot. The itinerary is crammed most days where you're on the go. Now, in Jerusalem, typically the guide will want to give you one afternoon, you know, where he says, okay, we're off for lunch, but we're not coming back here until, 4 or 5 o'clock. So you might have 3 hours on your own then. Now, pretty much every day, you're with the guide, you're on a bus, cramming in as many stops as you can, but when you get back to your hotel for dinner around 5 o'clock, you're done for the day. So what a number of people have done is after dinner, take a walk. Like if you're in Jerusalem, you could walk places or take a cab someplace, so there's evening time that's available. Okay? Good questions. What else? I promised we'd be done by 10 o'clock. No, I'm kidding. We're
Dan,
targeting 7:30.
Dan, what about accommodations? What are accommodations like?
Okay, accommodations. Again, because Imagine Tours is so experienced in this, they are having groups stay in 4 or 5-star hotels, absolutely outstanding. Huge buffets that are available both for breakfast and for dinner. So a typical day, the guide will tell you the day before. He'll say, tomorrow morning, he said, you'll want to have breakfast around 7:30 or 8 o'clock. We want to be on the bus at 8:30 or 9, something like that, okay? But you know what the schedule is going to be. So you can mingle. You're going to get to know other people in this group during the course of these meals, but then you want to be on the bus prompt so that you're ready to go. It's up to the guide where you stop, how long you stop. At different places, Dr. Sweeting is going to want to share maybe a little bit of a devotional. For example, it's a beautiful experience to take a boat ride on the Sea of Galilee because there's so many events that happen there. It's a great moment for a little devotional looking at the Sea of Galilee. Or in the Garden Tomb, an incredible place to visit. They have little pockets of areas for groups to sit down and have their own communion service. It's a wonderful memory, a priceless memory while you're in the Garden Tomb. So Dr. Sweeting will open the Word for you in different places. That's part of, drinking from the fire hydrant, as they say, while you're there. But once you're at dinner, you're done with your schedule for the day. Okay, yes.
How large a group is the Sweeting 20 group going to be?
Okay. Right now, we want to invite as many people as we can. In fact, one of the things I want to encourage you to do is think of other people from your church that might want to come with you or your extended family. We frequently get this. We say, well, I want to go, and I've got a brother living in Chicago. Can he and his wife come as well? And we're going to say yes, because this is first come, first serve. And people who fly from a different city, they just need to let Imagine Tours know that, because they will coordinate that so that people are arriving at the same time. Now, there is a specific cap on this in terms of your question. We have 40 tickets for this group for the Passion Play. If we had another, let's make up another 40 people that wanted to go on the Israel portion, we could do that. We just need a second bus. But there is a limit of 40 people who can do this trip with this Passion Play date that we have there. And I really hope all of you will do that. Like I say, it's just too special not to. So again, first come, first serve. If you know you want to go, register. Was there a hand up in the back table? Okay.
So you mentioned the extra price for a single traveler for the double occupancy fee. Is there a reason that the Imagine Tours would not double up to single people who may not know each other in a room?
Absolutely, they will do that. If you register as a single person and you say, I'm looking for a roommate, they know that. So the next single woman that's available, they'll do that. Yeah, it's not left to you and you alone, but I'm just saying you can help yourself in that regard if you know someone.
How big is the venue for the Passion Play? It's in Munich, right?
Close to Munich. It's actually a little town called Oberammergau. And you can Google that and kind of get a sense of it. It would be like, well, it's more like bigger than a mega church. It probably seats about 3,500 people. And it's an enormous stage because they have close to 2,000 people involved in the production of this presentation. It's an enormous stage. But they do this presentation every day for 6 months. It's about a 3-hour show in the afternoon, and then you break for a couple hours to have dinner. And everybody leaves the auditorium, and the city takes care of it. The whole town is behind this to make sure that everyone is getting a good meal. Everyone's going to stay somewhere in one of the hotels or homes for that night. But after the dinner, then you come back to the arena for another 2 to 3 hours for the second half of the show. It's a huge production. Google it, Passion Play. It's a phenomenal story. Up here.
So this question is more for some of the students. Is there any fundraising available to help people to cover some of that cost?
So on this trip, there won't be. In future trips, we might add that to the package, but there's nothing in advancement for this current trip.
Okay? Yep, back there.
Just curious about what the travel itinerary might look like. I mean, I realize that, the tour company's going to plan that out, but would you be flying like direct from Denver to wherever? Is there stops in between?
Well, there are no nonstop flights from Denver to Tel Aviv. There's none. But there are many where it's only one connection, and that's what Imagine will typically do as best they can. So you might connect here in the East Coast, like Philadelphia or New York or D.C. or Atlanta, and then from there nonstop to Tel Aviv. I prefer that to connecting somewhere in Europe, London, Frankfurt. We've done those too. Just because of where your sleep cycle is when you're on the plane, that's going to make a difference. But typically one stop. Now, as a practical tip, we'll provide this later for those who are registered. There's some things you can do to minimize jet lag, which is a big deal for some people. But we'll talk about that with people who are registered. Anything else? One more.
I'm coming, Mike. I'm coming. Past my steps limit tonight.
This is just a quick question. Is the Passion Play done in German?
Do you know? I don't know the answer to that one.
Now, my
I've
German
never
is
been.
really rusty.
I will tell you this, because of the international audience that they cater to, they're going to have that figured out with something. I don't know what the answer is.
Mike, I'll tell you, if it's in Greek, we're covered.
You know, Dr. Sweeting alluded to something that was unexpected for us the first time we went, well, each time we've been to Israel. You will see busloads of people from random places all over the world. A busload from Korea, or from some little obscure country in Africa, or China. You see what I mean? And what you begin to I get the chills just saying this, because it's a taste of heaven to realize that God's love has reached out to humanity across the globe. And you're going to see that in Israel that you would not see anywhere else. It's a fantastic moment when you discover that. I'll just wrap up. Do you have a question? Okay.
It doesn't guarantee if you're going to be together with your group when you're flying. What's the likelihood of that?
Yeah. Okay, that's if people register at the last minute. All right? We've had this happen in one of the groups we took from Boulder, where we thought we had it at about 30, and at the last minute, 3 more couples signed up. We were able to get them in, but they had to fly on a different flight to get us there that day. They were on the same flight coming home. But that's just for last-minute registrations. I'm hoping that won't happen here because of the urgency of this Passion Play. People need to make up their mind. Now, if tickets are still available, the school is still going to communicate this to say we got room for, 8 more, 6 more, something like that. But it's not likely. Not likely. Okay? Dan is saying that he's looking up on TripAdvisor that the Passion Play is presented in German. Okay, there will be textbook translation, all of that, because they have so many tourists from all over the world. I'll just add, we're done here in 2 minutes then. Dr. Sweeting was talking about some of the favorite places that he has seen in Israel. We were just there in May, and for my wife and I, this was our 4th time there, and yet we had an unforgettable moment. The last evening we were there, we were driving from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv just to go to a different restaurant for dinner. We're going through the countryside, and the guy just told the bus driver, he said, just pull over here on the shoulder right about there. There was no parking lot, nothing. We just pulled over on the shoulder of the road. We're out in the country, and it's just these huge grassy hills, few trees, but very barren. And he got out, and he said, this is a 10-minute stop, everybody out. And we get out of the bus, and we walk out into this field, and there's just big rolling hills on each side, and in the middle of the field is a rocky path, not as wide as one of these tables. And we're just walking on this path, and we walked maybe 100 yards out into the middle of the pasture. And he stopped, and he goes, okay, he says, how many of you know the story of David and Goliath? He said, it was on this hillside. The Philistines were camped right up there. Israelites were over here. David came down, and in this path, which is this little dry creek bed that only gets water in it during the heavy rainy season, so there's no grass growing there, it's just rocks. He said, so David picked up a few rocks here, and you know the rest of the story. There's no sign, there's no marker, and that's what Israel is like. There's just this wealth of stories, and as he said, you will never read the Bible the same. Because what you're going to realize is that our faith is rooted in geography and history. And it's just a life-changing experience. Again, I wish it for all of you that you would go. I hope that you will include the Passion Play. And I hope that you will talk to extended family or friends from your church, because this is going to be such a rare opportunity, not only to see Israel, but to see this Passion Play combination. And I will be available in the ongoing months if the point person here at the campus runs into a question they don't know, they'll call me right away. I love doing this kind of thing. I've helped many churches and parachurch ministries go on these. It's going to be wonderful. I just want to say thank you to all of you. Thank you to Dr. Sweeting for doing this. And thank you to you, Eric, for making this available. And I'm going to turn it back to you.
Let's give Dan a round of applause. That's nice. The reason he said he's available for questions and that we would call him is because we've had a lot of questions and we've called him. That's right, and we've become very good friends in that process. Some housekeeping matters. I know there weren't many flyers available at the table. I know that all of you have received them in snail mail, possibly in conjunction with an email. If you want more flyers, if you want them digital, if you want a packet of 5 or 10, just my business card's on the table. Feel free to email me, call me, and we'll send those out to you from Advancement, okay? To the question of size of group, I would say that our scope and our goal is intimacy and relationship, not mega event. Does that help describe it? Okay. This is the inaugural, so I would assume 10 years from now they'll hearken back and say, oh, what a sweet time with just those 40 people. Okay. So highlight that. And we want to make sure that we give Dr. Sweeting and Mrs. Sweeting a chance to stop along the way. And we say this, unpack what we're looking at and download for all of us what God would want downloaded into our lives, okay? I am available for questions at any time. Jill Sneed is in my office. You can call her. If you have a question for Dan, I can get it from Dan from you, and the same for Dr. Sweeting. Sound good? This has been captured on video, so if you have friends, just have them email me and say, send me the video from the Israel 2020 Information Dinner Night. It's a long title. And we will email it to them, okay? It is past 7:30. It's a weeknight. It's Thursday. Here come the holidays. We're all thinking about time. Let me just say on behalf of the President and the First Lady, thank you for your time. Thank you for your interest. And more than that, beyond this trip, thank you for your continued prayers and support of this university. It is a unique place, and God is good, and this place has set its course for one thing, and that is to give Him glory each and every day. Let me pray. Ask for traveling mercies and send you on your way. Father, we thank you for the time tonight, the fellowship in the room, just the casual conversation. We appreciate so much Dan's expertise and his willingness, selflessly, just to input into the trip that he's not even going to attend. So thank you for Dan. I pray that there are decisions in this group and maybe others that would make a decision to go, that we would spend time with you, Jesus, in the land that you walked, and that we would find ourselves with a new perspective on the salvation we hold, all because of you. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. God bless you. Have a great night.